What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so this particular topic regarding Rick Bucher, longtime FS1 analyst. I think he had his own podcast where he hosts, has been a frequent contributor to FS1 shows like The Herd and many others. I did a video on Patreon yesterday about what Rick Bucher came out and said recently. Okay. I'm just going to say on here, because I spoke more in depth on the Patreon. For those of you interested in the Patreon, there's usually a link to my Patreon in the comment section. There's also a link to the Patreon that runs at the bottom of my videos. But anyway, recently, Rick Bucher talked about how, unbeknownst to many people who follow sports, maybe on a more casual basis, or follow the NBA on a more casual basis, he said that a majority of NBA players, and I believe he said a majority of those affiliated with the game, team officials, what have you, right, either believe or they're very suspicious of LeBron and how he's been able to maintain his level of dominance going into his 23rd season. Okay. I'm not going to go into too much specifics. You can find the audio for yourself as far as what Rick Bucher said. He didn't come right out and say it because he said he didn't have the evidence to back it up, but he spoke about the 800-pound gorilla that's in the room. He spoke on it. And that's the thing. We're seeing more and more people, as we see the tail end of LeBron James' career unfold, we're seeing more and more people now being more willing to speak on their true feelings in regard to the situation. Look, LeBron is about to play in what's going to be his NBA record, 23rd NBA season. He's about to eclipse the record, which was previously set by Vince Carter. Now, Vince Carter is a guy who I would say from his fourth and fifth seasons in the league onward, consciously made more of a decision to become more of a jump shooter. And the reason why he did that was he wanted to preserve his career. He knew that the way that he was playing, more slashing, more attacking the rim, was going to shorten his career. That's some of the advice some people give right now to Ja Morant. They need to stop taking it to the rim, right? But anyway, it worked because Vince, who was never had the biggest ego in the world, never had the drive to be a superstar in the way that the league wanted him to be early in his career. He was more or less a role player the last half of his career, but he was able to play 22 years. But Vince literally limped around, and it was on fumes the last couple of years in this league. LeBron James is still at a point where he can outrun guys in their 20s on the court. There are some nights he looks his age, but then there are some nights where you're looking at this guy go coast to coast for dunks, and you're like, wait a minute, man. People don't look like that at age 40. People don't dunk like that at age 40. Even the greatest Methuselahs in the world as far as athletes, there's a slowdown. Even with George Foreman, when he won the title, he was 45 years old. May he rest in peace. We lost Big George this year. George was much slower, more arthritic. He had to alter his fighting style a little bit to be able to be productive as a boxer. You know what I'm saying? LeBron is still out here doing things that only 29-year-olds are doing, or 32-year-olds at the oldest. No, biologically, it doesn't make sense. When you take that into account with the other evidence we've seen over the years and the ties to certain usage, you know what I'm saying, as far as his trainers and those close to him, including his wife, right? With the biogenesis scandal and the investigations. What are we left to ponder about this? It's overwhelming. In my opinion, the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming to the point where if he's ever found to be unequivocally guilty of anything involving PEDs, all of his records should be completely erased from the record book. He should get the Barry Bonds treatment. He should. Because if let's just say Barry Bonds cheated, right? Barry still would have had a Hall of Fame career without PEDs. If you just go from 1986 to 2000, that's a Hall of Fame career that Barry Bonds had. You know what I'm saying? But I do got to say this at the end of this video, right? Because it's the title of my video. I noticed LeBron James is always quick to come out and, say either LeBron or Rich Paul, they're always quick to come out and dispute something as far as his legacy. Rich Paul was quick to come out and dispute what David Falk said about Michael Jordan, if he was able to be on a super team winning 15 titles, whatever, right? They were quick to come out and dispute anything that a Brian Windhorst or a Stephen A. Smith have to say, right? But when you have people make these damning allegations against you, whether it's what Cael Sonnen said twice, to the point where, as I said before, Cael Sonnen incriminated himself in making his allegations about you. Now we have Rick Bucher coming out and saying that half the NBA suspects you of doing the unthinkable. And not just your players, not just the peers you play against, but coaches and trainers and team officials. They all suspect that you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. And nothing's going to be said. And that silence is the biggest evidence that we have that there's something going on here. There's something going on here. I'm going to make a comparison historically. I know this has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, right? But I remember reading about the 1952 presidential campaign, right? That was Dwight D. Eisenhower versus Adlai Stevenson. And we know Eisenhower won the election, right? But late in that election campaign, Eisenhower's vice president, Richard Nixon, who ultimately became president many years later, right? But I was running with Nixon as his vice presidential candidate. And Nixon had this scandal where he had this so-called secret slush fund where many rich supporters in California who helped to start his political career, it was a fund that was started to help him pay for certain expenses, right? And I bring it up because he was being attacked by so many on the Democratic side, right? As far as having this slush fund and all that. But one person who was very, very quiet, never had anything to say about the whole situation, was Adlai Stevenson, which is odd considering that Adlai Stevenson was the Democratic nominee for president. The reason why he was so quiet is because he had a secret fund himself of even more money. So his silence was deafening to the point where, although the media did report on it, Adlai Stevenson had the same situation. So I say that to say this: like sometimes when people are really, really, really quiet about something like this, it's often an admission of guilt. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. Tell me what you guys think.